To understand the legend of Billy Cannon, you have to reconcile three impossible images that shouldn't belong to the same man. First, there is the bronze statue outside LSU's Tiger Stadium, capturing number 20 in the middle of the most famous punt return in history. Second, a federal mugshot from 1983, showing a fallen hero stripped of his glory, staring down a prison sentence for one of the largest counterfeiting schemes in American history. And finally, a photograph of an older man in a lab coat, finding peace inside the walls of the nation's bloodiest maximum security prison. This is a story of a man who became a myth at 22, a felon at 46, and found redemption in the last place anyone would look. In 1950s Louisiana, college football wasn't entertainment, it was regional redemption. The South was still nursing wounds from the Civil War and the Depression. As Tony Barnhart noted, the mindset was simple. We may not be able to beat the North in the war or economically, but by God, we can beat them on the football field. LSU was the cathedral of this secular religion, and the stadium itself was a monument to populist politics. Expanded in 1932 with money secured by Huey Long to house 1,500 students who literally lived inside the stadium structure. It created an otherworldly atmosphere in Death Valley, and LSU's night game winning percentage jumped from .419 to .745. Into this pressure cooker stepped William Ab Cannon. To understand the man, you have to look at where he came from. He was raised in the rough neighborhoods near Wells Avenue in Baton Rouge, an area columnist Smiley Anders described as having a lot of pool halls and sleazy bars. It was a place where you learned to be tough or you didn't last. At Estruma High School, Cannon wasn't just good, he was a statistical anomaly. In 1955 alone, he scored 39 touchdowns. He stood 6 feet 1 and weighed 210 pounds, massive for a back in the 50s, yet he possessed sprinter speed. He consistently clocked under 10 seconds in the 100-yard dash, and just to prove his strength, he could throw the shot put over 50 feet. He was the ultimate hybrid athlete. The recruiting battle for him was fierce, but he chose LSU for two very pragmatic reasons. It was close to home, and they were the only school that offered him a summer job to put cash in his pocket. Coach Paul Dietzel marveled at the contradiction of his size and speed. Billy's by far the best athlete I've ever coached. Give him a step and he's gone, but if there's no room, he'll run over you. Cannon anchored the offense, throwing the only touchdown in the Sugar Bowl to cap an 11-0 national championship season in 1958. But his legend was truly cemented on Halloween night, 1959. The humidity hung heavy over Baton Rouge. 67,327 fans packed the stadium. LSU was number 1. Ole Miss was number 3. The anticipation was so intense that one man famously offered to trade his wife for tickets. Trailing 3-0 late in the fourth quarter, Cannon fielded a punt at the 11-yard line, defying orders to let it go. He broke 7 tackles. He found the sideline. And 89 yards later, he crossed the goal line for the touchdown that gave LSU a 7-3 lead. But, and this is the part casual fans forget, the game wasn't over. Ole Miss drove the length of the field, reaching the LSU 2-yard line with 90 seconds left. It wasn't just the run that saved the game. It was the goal line stand. On 4th down, it was Warren Rabb and Billy Cannon who met Doug Elmore inches short of the goal line as time expired. As reporter Smiley Anders observed, if they hadn't stopped him, it would have been a nice run, but it wouldn't have been a legend. Cannon won the Heisman in a landslide, receiving more points than the next 8 players combined. He then triggered a legal war between the NFL and the upstart AFL, signing with the Houston Oilers for a then staggering $100,000 and a Cadillac. The courts ruled that the NFL had taken advantage of a naive provincial lad, a label that helped Cannon win the case. But that label masked the dangerous intelligence he actually possessed, and a growing addiction to risk that was about to spiral out of control. After a pro career that included 2 AFL championships, Cannon settled into life as an orthodontist in Baton Rouge. By 1980, he was making $300,000 a year. He owned a 20-acre lot worth over $1 million. But he was addicted to the action. He leveraged himself into massive debt during the real estate boom, and when the market crashed, he faced a multitude of civil lawsuits. Desperation, combined with that old appetite for high-stakes gambling, led him to a man named John Stiglitz, a former counterfeiter. The seduction was slow. It started with casual conversations about Stiglitz's past convictions, but soon turned into a business plan. Cannon provided $15,000 in seed money to purchase a printing press. The operation wasn't small time. They were aiming for the moon. Stiglitz eventually delivered the product to Cannon's office not in briefcases, but in garbage sacks filled to the brim with uncut sheets of fake $100 bills. It became the 7th largest counterfeiting scheme in U.S. history, producing $6 million in high-quality hundreds. The logistics of hiding that much cash were absurd. Cannon didn't use safety deposit boxes. He went to the hardware store. He bought red igloo ice chests, the kind you'd take to a tailgate. He sealed the money in plastic bags, loaded them into coolers, and then covered the cash with beer and loose ice to throw off anyone who might look inside. He then took a shovel and buried these ice chests on his various properties and rental houses. It was a heist run by a Heisman winner digging holes in the dirt. And it sounds unbelievable. On July 9th, 1983, the gamble failed. FBI agents had been watching him for a month. They watched from a distance as he dug up $2.2 million to show a co-conspirator, Timothy Melancon. That afternoon, the fall from grace arrived with a knock on the door. It was Cannon's daughter telling attorney Buck Kleinpeter, "Some men from the Secret Service want to arrest my daddy." Judge Frank Polizzola, an LSU grad, refused leniency. He sentenced the hero of 1959 to 5 years in federal prison. The College Football Hall of Fame immediately rescinded his election. The betrayal felt personal to the entire state. Media outlets played the punt return footage while reporting on his conviction. As Time magazine put it, he was a bogus hero. When Cannon left prison in 1986, he was a ghost. His dental practice collapsed. For nearly a decade, he sat in his office, the phone silent. He had lost his fortune, his reputation, and his place in history. He was untouchable. In 1995, Warden Burl Cain of the Louisiana State Penitentiary, known as Angola, took a risk. He hired Cannon to fix the prison's failing dental system. Angola was facing federal lawsuits for poor medical care, and it was not a place for the faint of heart. It is the end of the line for the state's most violent offenders. When Cannon arrived, the dental program was a house of horrors. The previous standard of care was basically an extraction factory. If a tooth hurt, they pulled it. Inmates were walking around with mouths full of rot. Cannon was appalled. He didn't just show up for a paycheck. He reorganized the entire medical system. He implemented hygiene programs and restorative procedures that most free citizens would pay good money for. He refused to let the inmates be ignored, personally scheduling appointments so that if an inmate didn't show up, they had to sign a refusal form, forcing them to acknowledge the care was available. He treated inmates with a specific philosophy. People confuse sympathy for empathy. I had empathy. He understood what it meant to be a number in a federal system. Warden Cain saw the transformation immediately. The man cares. The inmates love him, and because they love him, he cares more and won't dare let him down. For 23 years, the man who once ran for glory now walked the halls of Angola. The inmates didn't see the mugshot or the Heisman. They saw a man who relieved their pain. They called him Legend. But outside the prison walls, the forgiveness didn't come easily. The public didn't naturally care about the dental health of murderers and thieves. What changed their minds wasn't the work itself, but the silence with which Cannon did it. There were no press conferences, no "I'm sorry" tours. He simply went to work in a hellhole every day for 2 decades. Word began to filter out through the prison guards and the families of inmates. They told stories of a Billy Cannon who was humble, patient, and exhausted. Local sports writers, expecting to find a broken man or a con artist, visited Angola and found a dedicated doctor instead. The narrative shifted. The people of Louisiana realized this wasn't court-ordered community service. This was penance. He had stopped trying to be a god and had started being a man. The ice finally broke in 2007. At a sports banquet in Baton Rouge, Cannon walked into a room filled with the state's power players, the same people who had shunned him for 20 years. But this time, instead of silence, they stood up. The cheers started low and grew into a roar. In 2008, the College Football Hall of Fame followed suit and reinstated him. And on a night in November, LSU retired his number 20. Teammate Warren Rabb watched as the vibration of the cheering crowd shook the upper deck of Tiger Stadium. He said, "I've never seen tears in Billy Cannon's eyes until that night." When Billy Cannon died in 2018, his funeral drew hundreds. But the most profound tribute came from the men he served. The inmates at Angola requested permission to build this casket. Using their own meager funds for materials, they handcrafted a wooden coffin for the man who had treated them like human beings. Warden Darrell Vanoy called it a testament of the highest level of respect. Billy Cannon's life proved that while a moment can make you a legend, it takes a lifetime to become a man. I'm curious to hear from the diehards. Where does Cannon rank for you among the all-time SEC greats? And does the goal line stand impress you more than the run? Let me know in the comments. This is John Johnston with Hardcore College Football History. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please check out our other history videos, and you might enjoy going to our website where you can click on the timeline feature and see series about the history of early American football or the history of offense. You can learn about the veer, the first triple option offense, or the history of the I formation.